Hey everybody, it's Lynsey G. I'm back. I have returned from not live streaming for a little while. I had to take a month where I didn't stream because I had two conventions that I went to in 2 weeks for my publishing company, Oneshi Press. We went to MizCon here in Missoula, Montana, which was a 4-day affair over Memorial Day weekend. That's the name of the weekend. And then 3 days after that ended, we went to Spokane, Washington for Lilac City Comic Con, which was a 2-day convention, but took 4 days because we had to get to Spokane and into our Airbnb and then back. So yeah, I had a whole lot going on the past few weeks and just wasn't able to stream because I was at conventions on Sunday afternoons. So now it's about a month since my last stream. It's been a while. I feel a little rusty, but I'm gonna try to act like I don't, although I just said it, so I guess I don't really have to act like anything now that you know. Okay, oh, check this out. All those boxes that have been behind me for a long time, they're gone. Now I have more space in my office to move around. So maybe I'll do some dancing? Probably not. Probably not going to do dancing. Anyway, I'm here to read a chapter from my book, which is called Watching Porn. But we don't say porn on Facebook any more than we have to, except it is the title of my book, so it's kind of a conundrum. But we don't write it down anymore because shadow bans are not good for business. And I think I maybe am being a little shadow banned. People aren't really seeing a lot of the stuff that I've been putting up recently, which is a shame. Because a few years ago, you could say and write about smut on the internet, but now people don't like that anymore. So I have a whole bunch of stuff in my past on my Facebook feed and in other places where I'm talking frankly about these subjects, and now that's not so cool anymore. So anyway, just FYI, I'm trying not to write the word PORN anywhere because it's scary. It's bad. Okay, what else is going on? All right, this week I am going to be reading chapter 18, which is called Making It in Miami, and it's actually a short, kind of fun chapter. The chapters before it, leading up to this, were pretty intense. We got pretty deep into issues around homophobia, race, ableism, misogyny, feminism, all of that. And after all that, it seemed like a chapter that was just a little bit more fun might be in order. Because after all, smut is supposed to be fun. That's what it's created for. It's entertainment. And it can be very fun. As can going to parties in Miami, which you will find out. I've got some tea here. I've got some water. I just ate a kiwi. Feeling pretty good. But before I get into the actual chapter reading, I want to chat for a little while about something else, which I don't have all of the details on. I didn't do a huge amount of research into this, so there may be some bits that I'm missing, but I thought a little news item might be fun to discuss before we get into the reading, especially since this is a short chapter. Not everybody follows what goes on in the adult entertainment industry as closely as I do. So I don't know how much everybody watching this is going to know about the series of scandals. I'm not sure if scandals is exactly the right word. The series of allegations of violation of consent that has gone on in the porn industry over the past about 4 years. It started actually before the Me Too movement went up on like a global scale. It was about 4 years ago. I don't remember if it's like 3.5 or 4.5, but it's a half of some kind. The performer Stoya alleged in a tweet that her ex-boyfriend and fellow performer James Dean had violated her consent, woefully so, multiple times. And that was a big blow because James Dean was like the golden boy of the adult entertainment industry at the time. He had been actually celebrated by women and the feminist community as sort of like a feminist friendly male porn star working in the straight porn industry. And it was a big upset when Stoya, who also is like a pillar of the porn community, and a highly intelligent, like very well respected performer, made these claims and was immediately joined by over, I think, a dozen other women who said that he had violated their consent on and off camera, on sets, and in private, at parties, all over the place. And basically it became very clear. I think I've talked about it in the book, and if I haven't, I talk about it at some point. It became very clear that he was a habitual violator of people's consent. And it was actually very interesting because there have been allegations like that made against other people in the past, but for some reason, this one really took off. And I think it was because feminists, and particularly women who were his main fans, felt betrayed. But what was really amazing about it was that rather than telling Stoya that they didn't believe her because they liked James Dean, pretty much everybody sided with Stoya and with his other victims. And that was like a real shift in the way that people responded to that kind of thing, especially when it came to, a community of sex workers. A lot of the time, sex workers are not believed if they try to come forward with this kind of thing, because there's this idea that if you do sex work, then your consent can't be violated because you're just, you're always up for it or whatever, which is grossly not true, and gross. But that's been kind of the way that people felt about it for a long time. So anyway, when people sided with Stoya and the adult entertainment industry really came together behind her, a bunch of companies stopped working with him entirely. People took him off of their contracts, refused to work with him. And that it was really awesome to see. So anyway, fast forward a little bit. There have been multiple other allegations since then against other performers and directors, about people, having their consent violated, primarily on camera. And it's brought up a lot of questions about how consent works, when you're on camera, when there's money being exchanged. Like, this conversation really got going, about, consent violations and sexual abuse at work. I believe it really started with the porn community, and then I don't remember how long it was after that, but the Hollywood stuff really got going after the porn stuff. So once again, these two industries, Hollywood and pornography, are very closely linked. So fast forward, it's continued. There's been a continuing role of people coming out and saying so-and-so violated my consent and it's not okay, and companies who are working with those people trying to figure out what to do about it. In every single case, the violators of consent have denied the allegations, and I don't think that anything has gone to court, but it's definitely like a continuing conversation. So, back to today's news. Kink.com, which is probably the world's largest BDSM website, and used to be a giant production company out of San Francisco. They now contract with individual producers and directors who film scenes elsewhere and then put them up on the Kink.com website. Kink.com has been very concerned about consent for a lot of reasons for a long time, primarily because they do BDSM related content. It's very important that they show consent happening on their sets as clearly as they can, to make it clear to people watching that what's going on is consensual, even if it looks, violent or degrading, because BDSM can get kinky. So actually, when the James Dean allegations happened, they dropped him. They stopped working with him entirely. They started working on making consent clearer, more prized on their sets, and they've done the best that they know how, and they keep working harder to make consent clearer. So I think that's been really great. And as of this past week, they introduced a set of like standardized checklists that they're going to now be using on all of their sets, They're basically checklists of sex acts that are okay, like level of intensity that is okay. Trying to think what else. I don't have it all in front of me right now. Let's see, but I have a little write-up. Okay, they have a basic checklist for, like, kind of, it could work on any set. It details a variety of sex acts, whether a performer will be performing or receiving those sex acts, the level of intensity that is permissible, fluid exchange protocols, and safe words. And then they also have BDSM specific checklists, which are broken down into the dominant and the submissive role, that get into, you know, specific kink practices that people might want to practice on set, people's physical sensitivity, their desire for marks or no marks on their skin, and a whole bunch of other things. And then there's a separate document called Performer Rights and Responsibilities, which addresses issues around consent. So there's a whole lot of consent stuff in there. I don't really, it's kind of difficult. I'm not sure I have exactly the language, but basically what they're doing is they put these documents up on their website, and they said, everybody can feel free to use these documents. We are encouraging people across the adult entertainment industry to use these documents when performers come to set, have them talk about what they want, and then have them basically, you know, write it all down and sign it at the bottom. That way it protects performers because, you know, in a two-person scene, right, you're basically being asked to kind of study your scene partner before you go in. You have to read this list and acknowledge that you understand everything that's on it. So there's not an excuse for saying, oh, I didn't know that that person didn't want to be slapped in the face. Like, yes, you did, because we went over this together. You signed this document. And then it also helps to protect everyone else on the set. You know, no one there is now going to be able to say, oh, we weren't aware that so-and-so's consent about this thing was being violated, because we had no way of knowing that they didn't like that. No, you did. And so if you allow something to go on that is not supposed to be going on according to your paperwork, then we know who is at fault. So I think that this is a really interesting step. There is no rule in place. There's nobody that's even able to make rules saying that everybody has to use these documents, because the adult entertainment industry is vast and very spread out and not regulated. So really anyone can do whatever they want. But kink.com is like a leader in this regard, and they have actually, if you go to kink.com, the front page of their website after you get through the age verification check is these documents. So they're making it very clear that they believe that this is the right step, and they hope that everyone else will either use these or, you know, make their own versions that fit their own sets. And I think it's a really interesting move, because, like, on the one hand, it's sort of like a contract, and you're sort of codifying your sex before you have it, which sounds like not exciting to some people. It sounds like less spontaneous. But the thing about porn is that the performers are professionals. They're literally making a living doing this, and they can make it work. This is what they do. They know how to make it sexy, and they can do that whether it's entirely spontaneous or not. And I think that, you know, spontaneity is fun, but I would rather know personally that the people I'm watching in a film or a scene or whatever were able to enjoy themselves because they felt safe. That's more important to me than being like, oh wow, this is so unexpected and fun. And for the record, many people don't know this, but a lot of porn scenes are pretty scripted anyway. A lot of the time, you know, the director will say, okay, we're gonna do this, that position, that position, pop shot, done. So a lot of the time people know what they're getting into very clearly and very specifically anyway. This is just making the issue of consent a little bit more explicit, and hopefully holding people more actually legally responsible because they signed their name to a document beforehand. So we'll see where it goes. I don't know if this will actually be adopted by everyone or not, but I think it's a great step. I think it's a good idea. And if anyone else has thoughts on it, I would love to hear them. I'm gonna have some tea. All right, yeah, I was fussing with my hair there for a little while because it does this thing. So last night I went out dancing and I put a little bit of product in my hair, and then today I didn't wash it, but I showered and it was just sticking up so much, and I kept seeing myself on the camera and I was like, ah, it's too much sticking up happening. So that's all that I have to say about that, unless anybody else wants to chime in. I guess I've spent about 20 minutes chatting about this kink.com thing. I wonder if that, I know that especially in BDSM relationships, there is often a like contract type document that's drawn up about what people are interested in getting out of it, what they're interested in practicing, what's okay, what's not okay. And this is trying to normalize that on like a larger level. And I wonder if that's a good idea for more of us to follow. I do think that there really is like an importance placed on the idea that romance and love and sex are unpredictable. And I do understand the thrill there, where if you don't know what's coming, it can be very exciting. But I do think that that's also where a lot of uncertainty can come from. And it also, I don't know, it lends itself to this idea that like sex is supposed to be mysterious, and it's only good if it's mysterious. And I understand that too, because I was raised the same way as everybody else. Like, we don't talk about this stuff, therefore it's mysterious, and that makes it exciting. But that's really just because we are uncomfortable talking about it, I think. And I think that that's why that discomfort and that mystery around sex and sexuality has led to the Me Too movement and people being taken advantage of and abused, like, all the time. Like, regularly. It is completely routine for people to be sexually harassed and for their consent to be violated, because we think that talking about what we want and don't want takes the mystery out of it, you know, takes the fun out of it. And I think we've just been taught to think that it's only fun if there's mystery. But the thing about sex is that it's fun. That's kind of by definition what sex is. So can you really take the fun out of it by understanding clearly what your partner or partners want out of the experience? I would like to think not. I would like to think that it can just make the experience more fun because everybody's getting what they want out of it. But we definitely have a big cultural hurdle that we have to get over before that happens. Because, yeah, especially in America, I think that this is very different in some other countries, but particularly in America, it's such a taboo topic that we can't talk about it realistically, and we especially can't talk about it with the person that we're about to have sex with. And that's not helpful, you know. It's not good. I'm not an expert on this. I have been, like I said, raised in the same culture as everybody else. I'm not super great at talking about this stuff when it actually comes down to it, but I want to try. Maybe I'll use some of these checklists from kink.com. I don't know. We'll see. All right. Anyway, that's enough of that. I'm going to read from my book now. I think this is a very short chapter, so it should go quickly, and it's pretty fun. Oh yeah, it's only like 6 pages long or something. So this will be fun. I'm going to show you the picture that goes with this chapter. It is very hard to see, and this picture has been considerably lightened for reproduction. My face is brilliant there. Also, my nails. Don't look at my nails. Oh, they're terrible. Okay, so I'm going to read the chapter, and you'll understand what happened in this picture by the end of the chapter. Chapter 18, Making It in Miami. I'm playing with my light over here. Hang on. Chapter 18, Making It in Miami. The spring of 2011 passed in a whirl of porn conventions and conversations with agents and lawyers about media deals. Contract negotiations for my pilot had wrapped up with an even-handed, if not exactly magnanimous, pilot deal, but no co-writer had turned up. For anyone who hadn't seen the chapters before this, I was in contract negotiations with a television production company in Los Angeles who wanted to make a TV show about my life as a porn reviewer. And this is where we were at. They were doing contract negotiations while I was back in New York. And they wanted I forgot about this. They wanted a female-only writing team. So they were looking for a co-writer to help me write a pilot about my life, and nobody was turning up because female writers in Hollywood are hard to find, and especially ones that are comfortable writing about this subject matter for like a sitcom-style show. Anyway, the lack of TV writers in LA was just as profound as it had been the year before. An interesting juxtaposition, I thought, with the porn industry. Although its boys' club reputation is warranted in many ways, porn is comparatively welcoming for women who want to succeed in business, from writing to directing to producing. Award-winning performer and director, and now world-famous Donald Trump mistress Stormy Daniels told me once that she loves directing. "Come on, you get to yell at boys with their pants down and get paid for it. It doesn't get any better than that," she said. She's funny. But not so in Hollywood, where boys still rule the roost. I considered finding a female porn script writer. The Hollywood folks would have no idea what to do with us as a writing team. I had a feeling that writing talent from the Valley might have more to teach big production studios than anyone would expect, but sadly I knew that the idea would never fly. Any porn talent the TV company would want, I felt certain, would be starring as themselves, novelty items, in skimpy outfits, on camera, and not behind it. Nobody at the big kids' table would go for my idea. Meanwhile, Whack, which, if you're just joining us, was the magazine that I ran online. It was a review and op-ed and interviews with adult entertainment people. Meanwhile, Whack had teamed up with a man we'll call Mo. If you picture a younger version of the Simpsons bartender and replace his apron with a goofy t-shirt, you're not far off target. He claimed that he could get us advertising revenue if we made him part of our team. We obliged, as we'd so far had no luck earning any money on our venture. The position we'd placed the magazine in, the unoccupied middle ground between the porn industry and consumers, made us a conundrum for online advertisers. We weren't a porn site, and we were, at this point, non-explicit, aside from the occasional boob, because we wanted consumers to be able to read interviews and reviews anywhere. But we were not a porn site either. Many of our analytics implied that Whack was frequently an accidental click during a frenzied masturbation session. Our top search terms were the names of porn stars we had interviewed, and although people often did stay to read the articles, we knew that we weren't exactly what many were looking for. So advertisers didn't know what to do with us. Adult companies couldn't use explicit ads on our site, but non-adult companies didn't want to touch us with a 10-foot pole lest their reputations get besmirched. In short, we had been laboring on the magazine for years and had made $0 on Whack magazine. We loved working on it, but we had funded every bit of it thus far by scraping the bottoms of our very shallow pocketbooks. Almost every cent I earned went to Whack, minus rent, groceries, and health insurance. I dragged my lovers to strip clubs, which was not too difficult to manage, and sex industry events, instead of taking them on real dates, because I didn't have the time or money to do both. Matthew and Jen were usually happy to oblige, but my life had been devoted to making my career in porn journalism work rather than, having a life. In effect, Mo's promises to find advertisers and other forms of monetization for the website were pretty appealing, but I didn't trust him. I made my discomfort known to the rest of the Whack crew, pointing out that he didn't seem to have a plan so much as a desire to hang out with porn stars. But the others voted me down, and so we started meeting weekly at Mo's apartment in the East Village. It wasn't long into this association that I realized that his neighbor was a porn star and a friend of ours, a sweet lady who we'll call Alexa, and that they had been sleeping together. Which was all well and good as far as I was concerned, but I recognized that he had gotten it into his head that if he and Alexa teamed up with us, we could all turn a profit, and I wasn't convinced that he actually knew how to make that happen. Specificity and planning notwithstanding, Mo was gracious enough to throw in some cash and some smooth talking that landed us our very own booth at the Exotica Expo in Miami Beach, Florida, in May of 2011. We paid for our booth and Mo paid for our booth and promised us spending money if we could get ourselves to Miami and find a place to stay. So I, along with Jay Vegas and our IT guy, who we'll call Jordan, bought plane tickets and reserved beds at a hostel near the beach. I flew to Orlando, then boarded a puddle jumper to Miami. As I located my economy seat, I glimpsed a very large pair of sunglasses and the sweep of an abundance of dirty blonde hair as it flounced over a small shoulder. A light voice spoke to the large tattooed man with a shaved head in the other seat, and I saw neck tattoos. The woman beside him turned her head just enough to show her profile. My favorite performer and a close friend of Whack, a prominent porn star who I dubbed Jenny Hart in Chapter 8. I leaned forward and whispered, "Jenny," between the seats just as the plane taxied onto the runway, unable to get closer because of my seatbelt. She looked up. "Lynsey? Oh my God!" She leaped up, during takeoff, clearly without her seatbelt on for all the plane to see, and turned around to get a better look at me. "I'm so glad you're on this flight. I'm so bored." She introduced me to her bodyguard, who we'll call Graham here because I don't actually remember his real name and because Graham seems like an excellent name for a bodyguard. Jenny knelt on her seat, facing backwards, with her arms hanging over the back of it while we chatted. She'd been signing autographs in Orlando for a few days, and she was now looking forward to Miami, where she was signing at the expo and hosting a few parties over the weekend. After a while, she sat down and checked her phone, which she had clearly not set to airplane mode. She was saying something to Graham and scrolling through an app when suddenly she went still. After a beat of silence, she shout-whispered, "Shit! Shit!" She sprang back up on the seat, her eyes wide with panic. "Shit! Oh my God! Lynsey, I left my fucking clothes in Orlando! All of my designer clothes! In the dresser at the hotel!" She turned around and sat back down, silent. Graham turned to me with a not very concerned expression, winked, and held up his hand with 5 fingers splayed. Then he did a silent, measured countdown with his fingers. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And right on cue, Jenny began to chant, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God." She sped up incrementally until she was whispering, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God," like a prayer, her breath coming faster and her pitch climbing several octaves. What followed was an epic 45-minute meltdown that I recall now with fondness. For the remainder of the flight, Jenny told me in detail about the contents of her $3,000 travel wardrobe. She demanded that Graham call someone right away and have the items shipped or driven to Miami. When Graham refused, reminding her that he couldn't make calls during the flight, she began frantically texting and tweeting. Her emotional state jumped from fear that the housekeeping staff would steal her designer collection, to quiet, stoic calm, back to optimism that somebody in Orlando could bring it to Miami, and then right back into rage at Graham for not having checked her drawers because he knew how forgetful she could be. There were tears. The moment the plane touched down, Jenny was on her phone, taking a moment before the Orlando Hotel's front desk picked up to berate Graham again for not already being on his phone. The two of them were still in their seats, trying to figure something out when it was my turn to leave the plane, so I filed out with the other passengers, every last one of whom knew exactly what had happened to Jenny since she had given approximately 0 fucks about sharing her misery with the entire plane. When I made it to the gate, I called Jordan, whose flight had landed shortly before mine. As I hung up, Jenny appeared out of the jetway with a small roller suitcase in tow. She was nibbling on her lower lip, and when she saw me, she ran to me and threw her arms around my shoulders as she broke down into sobs. She had cried on the plane, but this was different. Her grief felt deeper now. She was ugly crying. We sat down as she tearfully explained to me in hushed tones that she was under a lot of stress in her personal life. Her new boyfriend had approved of her career when they got together, but now that things were getting serious between them, he was starting to feel jealous. He wanted her to consider quitting porn to settle down with him. "I love my work," she told me as I held her hand. "I've worked so hard for this career. I don't want to give it up, and I love what I do. It's made me who I am." But she didn't want to lose her boyfriend either. Feeling as if I had suddenly been tossed from the shallow end of Jenny Hart's acquaintance pool into the deeper waters of confidant territory, I muddled through soothing answers, but the more she talked, the less muddling I needed to do. I tried to put myself into one of her amazing pairs of designer shoes. Jenny is about a year older than I am, which in May of 2011 put her at 29 years old. She had been working in porn for a full decade, most of her adult life. She won numerous awards from every industry group that gave them out, become one of the most recognizable porn stars in the world, and started her own production company. She was a walking triumph, having found a job she loved, grown into it, grown up with it, and succeeded beyond her wildest dreams. She worked around the clock, maintaining the vessel with which she performed, her small but beautifully proportioned body, perfecting her brand, feature dancing, signing autographs, managing her company, and now writing, directing, producing, and performing in her own films, all while keeping a dynamic social media presence to interact with her millions of fans worldwide. Her star was still, almost impossibly, on the rise, a decade into a career that most predicted would last only a few months. I looked at the beautiful, intelligent, and successful woman sobbing into my arms, thousands of miles away from her home and her stupid, jealous boyfriend. I felt certain that this boyfriend benefited from her career more than he realized. Jenny was very likely to provide him with a lifestyle he couldn't begin to expect on his own. And the work she put in was exhausting. She was depleted, and she was under far too much pressure. I wanted to punch her selfish boyfriend in the head. What kind of jerk signs up to be the significant other of a dazzling woman like Jenny Hart, a woman who is world famous for her fierceness and sexuality, and then gets petulant about the career that allows her star to shine so brightly? What kind of self-entitled prick would dare approach her, much less work himself into her life and her heart, only to decide that the career that she has poured her heart, body, and soul into is too threatening? What an absolute turd. As Jenny began to gather herself, Graham came down the jetway to tell her about the phone calls he had been making to get her things back. They both thanked me for my support, and we went our separate ways. That afternoon, as Jordan, Vegas, and I were settling into our hostel, I got a text from Jenny inviting us to the penthouse she was sharing with her best friend Joanne at a luxury hotel farther down the beach. The three of us basically tripped over each other's feet on the way to hail a cab, and we spent the late afternoon enjoying beers and weed in a palatial suite overlooking Miami Beach with two of the world's most successful porn stars. Jenny had arranged to get her things from Orlando. She would have her wardrobe later that night. She invited us to a VIP party that evening, where we lounged around at an outdoor courtyard filled with palm fronds and candles, watching a few brave souls swim in the pool despite the chilly night air. We were waited upon hand and foot as we schmoozed with the top talent in the adult industry, with Jenny periodically updating me on the mission to save her clothing. By the time we left, it had been recovered, in just one suitcase, which Graham proudly wheeled by us with a grin and a wave. I felt like Whack had accomplished something after years of trying. Not success exactly, but maybe acceptance. We had been admitted into the Cool Kids Club. It may have just been that I was in the right time and the right place, with the right star having a panic attack, but I preferred to think that our hard work and passion for porn had been integral as well. I need some tea. My throat hurts. I went dancing last night. It's not something that I do that often, and there was a lot of wooing and woohooing and shouting over the music, and my throat is not super happy with me. All right, right back into it. The next morning, we arrived early at the convention hall to set up the Whack Magazine's first ever booth at an industry convention. Mo, although he showed up hours late and only provided us with a third of the spending money he had promised us, had secured a large corner spot just inside the doors, directly across from the LA Direct Talent Agency booth, where some heavy-hitting performers would be signing throughout the weekend. We set up a signing table for our booth babes, Lexi Love, Angel Vane, and Trina Michaels, arranged all the swag we had brought with us, stickers, magnets, and other cheapo goodies, and settled in for the long weekend. At the party the previous night, I had seen my first male porn star crush, Kenny Styles, come in, and I'd commented to a few people about how attractive he was. You might remember Kenny Styles from Chapter 14, the only actor of Asian heritage to make a big name for himself in the history of American pornography. And when I say actor, I mean male actor, particularly. I should have written that. I had struck up a sort of Twitter flirtation, or at least my version of a Twitter flirtation, which consisted of me asking him for interviews repeatedly and then never doing them. And I had been praising his performances in my reviews. I enjoyed his chemistry with female performers, his charming smile, and his British accent almost as much as I enjoyed his physical attributes, which were more than enough to win me over in the first place. I don't remember how, but word of my crush got around, and he was brought over to the Whack booth by a friend and introduced to me. In typical confident porn guy style, he was relaxed but slightly goofy in his extremely appealing way, while I furiously blushed and kept asking him about the same interview. I probably could have stuck the camera in his face right then, but I was too tongue-tied to get my shit together, so I told him I would catch up with him another time. Then I studiously avoided him for the rest of the day. Smooth, I know. On Saturday night, we accompanied Jenny and her entourage to the party she was hosting at the Fontainebleau Hotel's nightclub. Adorned in our discount rack best, we walked into a massive nightclub with some of the biggest porn stars in the world, feeling very much like this should all be happening in slow motion, possibly with explosions happening behind us. We proceeded straight to the VIP section overlooking the dance floor, where we got blitzed on bottle service. Mo and Alexa joined us, making out in the corner the whole time, and Vegas, Jordan, and I danced the night away. When I woke up at the hostel on Sunday, my voice was gone. I've been prone to laryngitis my whole life, and my 3 solid days of drinking, shouting at strangers at the convention, moving between Miami's late spring humidity and Arctic air conditioning, and Saturday night's excesses had combined to leave me without a voice for the duration of the expo. As I descended to the hostel's bar/lobby, which is a thing, it was a 24-hour bar in the lobby of the hostel that we were staying in, I realized I couldn't remember much of the night before. I did oddly recall walking back to the hotel with Vegas and Jordan and demanding tacos from a street vendor at 3 a.m., but most of the party after our dramatic entrance was gone. When I found Vegas and Jordan, I tried to croak out a question about what the hell had happened. They laughed at my hangover. "What are you even doing here?" Vegas demanded. "I can't believe you didn't go home with Kenny." I whispered, "Kenny Styles?" He nodded, and I was confused. "He wasn't even at the party," I said. Vegas raised one eyebrow and whipped out his cell phone, pulled something up, and shoved it in my face. It was a photo of me, drink in hand, and with a shocked look on my face, in the arms, like literally being held several feet off the ground in the arms of a hugely grinning Kenny Styles. I had no memory of this event. "You two really hit it off last night," Vegas gloated. "You should have gone back to his hotel with him." To this day, I don't remember what went down that night. After thinking very hard, I could vaguely recall Kenny arriving and eventually dancing with me, but not that he had picked me up. I wondered if our dancing had been sexy or silly. In my sensible way, I imagined that I must have decided to leave the party rather than throwing myself at a porn star I had just met. I didn't want to make the rather gross assumption that his friendliness or career decisions left him open to my sexual advances. I'm sure that I threw in the idea that, with 2 romantic partners back in New York, I shouldn't indulge with a virtual stranger. They might get upset. But looking back, I wonder if I just cock-blocked myself. If he had actually been interested, and whether my partners in New York would have been that upset if I had gone for it and brought home an amazing story of coital bliss with my biggest crush in porn. After all, we were already in a polyamorous relationship. Jen regularly had dalliances on the side and told me all about them. Matthew wasn't so open, but he was remarkably laid back about my crazy lifestyle. Oh well, Lynsey G, missing out on the fun stuff on purpose since 1983. And that's the end of the chapter. So, yeah, this is the picture of me with a drink and with Kenny Styles. And I do not like being picked up. Because I don't know if you can tell, internet, but I am a very small person, like very small. So my entire life, people have thought that it would be cute to pick me up. So I've been getting picked up and dropped by people since I was very young, and I don't like it. So I was clearly like fooling around and having a good time with Kenny, and then he picked me up and I was like, oh no! This picture is really bad. There's actually like in the full picture, there's like a huge thumb like over this side of the picture, and it's really dark and you can hardly see it, but it's so funny. Yeah, so apparently Kenny and I really hit it off, and I don't remember it at all. And I actually had to get in touch with him to get permission to use that picture, and to see if I could use his real name, because basically the way that I approached the stories about public personalities in this book was, if it was something that happened publicly, like in full view of a whole bunch of people with a relatively famous person, then I'm fine with using the person's name without asking. Like the story about Ron Jeremy assaulting me in front of a bunch of people. A whole lot of people saw that. There's no point in me pretending like it wasn't him, so I used his name. But I figured that the stuff with Kenny, I should probably check, because whatever happened, I don't remember it, but a whole bunch of people did see it, but we were in the VIP section with a bunch of other people who might want their identities, not talked about. I don't know. So in order to get that picture and this story in the book, I had to contact him. And as of the time that I contacted him, he was living in Thailand, He had gotten out of the porn industry and was living in Thailand with his wife and young son, and I think was living like a vegan lifestyle and like had a whole blog about it and parenting and stuff. And I was like, oh, well, he's clearly moved on with his life. He's not going to have any idea who I am. But I messaged him and he was like, Lynsey, of course I remember you. Yeah, you can totally use that picture. That's so funny. And now I'm like, oh my God, he remembers me. I probably could have had more fun that night than I did. Maybe. Again, I'm making assumptions. But I like to think that he liked me. Oh, and the Jenny Hart story. That was another thing where a lot of what happened on the plane and everything was very public, so maybe I could have used her real name there, but especially the personal details I didn't feel right just sharing. So I also contacted her, and she did not want me to use her name. But the person who I'm calling Jenny Hart there and I still talk pretty frequently. She is no longer in the industry and is getting a degree in psychology and wants to become a psychologist. So that's what those people are up to. And that's it for this week. It was a quick, fun chapter where I get to gloat about some of the cool things that I've done. There aren't that many of them, so I feel like when I have a cool thing, I should probably write the whole story down. That plane meltdown was epic. Like, it was so awesomely dramatic. I was like so impressed. I don't think I could even melt down that dramatically, like if I tried to. Like, it's just not, that's not my personality. And it was epic. And that was a really fun weekend. I think I had no voice for like 3 or 4 days. So I had to fly back with no voice. I had to like make my way around Miami for like 2 days with no voice, and then fly back to New York and then go to work for like 2 days because I wasn't sick. I just couldn't speak. That happens to me actually kind of frequently. Like if I'm pushing myself too hard, a lot of the time, one of the first things that will happen is I'll lose my voice. It used to happen a lot in high school and college because I used to sing in high school and college, and so I'd be using my pipes more. So I guess in the interest of not losing my voice after last night's excessive drinking and dancing, and then doing this live stream where I'm talking a whole lot, maybe I should call it a day. It's only been about 45 minutes though, so I guess we can do a quick like Q&A if anybody has any questions about anything that I just read, or about the documents that I was talking about earlier that kink.com released, about writing. I am also an editor and a writing coach, and I wrote this book, clearly, obviously. So any of that stuff, if anybody has anything that they want to say, we can totally talk about that. I'm trying to think, what else is going on in my life? The conventions, we did the conventions. They are done for now. There's another one coming up in August. Yes, mid-August, and then another one in September in Saskatchewan, in Canada. I have never been to Saskatchewan, and it is fun to say Saskatchewan, so that'll be a good time. And right now it's summer, and it's getting really nice out, and that's exciting. And yeah, I don't know. I'm sure that there's other things going on in my life, but I can't think of what they are right now. Somebody ask me a question. Come on. Anything. Just give me something to talk about. Nothing? 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 Alright, well, I don't know. I'm gonna sip my tea. Something just flitted through my head. Oh, if anyone out there is interested in Oneshi Press, which is my publishing company, it did not publish this book. This book was published by the Overlook Press in New York, and the deal was made before I started Oneshi Press, so this is a separate endeavor. But, by the way, you actually can get copies of this from me. If you want a signed copy of this book, which is very informative about the adult entertainment industry, and also has fun stories like the one that I just read, I do have copies available for sale, and you can get them from my website, lynseyg.com. It's spelled like this, but it's backwards. It's lynseyg.com. They're available there. But my publishing company, Oneshi Press, does graphic works. So we do comics and graphic novels and illustrated books. We have published this guy and this guy. These are two comics that I wrote. This is the first in a graphic novel called Tracy Queen, and it is also about the adult entertainment industry. The main character is an adult entertainer. She does webcam work and other types of smut. And she's also a super badass warrior, and a brilliant super genius biochemist. She has a lot going on. This is the first volume of the graphic novel. There will eventually be 8, and then there will be a collected huge book. This is called Pack Number 1, Humility. This is a comic book series. It's a little shorter, a little smaller. Every issue is smaller, I should say. There are eventually going to be 7 of these, and they are going to be detailing the lives of a pack of stray dogs who fight crime in Brooklyn, along with this guy who wants to be a dog, but is not, so he wears a dog mask. So both of these are available through Oneshi Press, my publishing company, as well as 7, almost 8 at this point, comics collections. The 8th one is going to be out in July, hopefully early July. We're still getting all of the art in and putting it all together. And that is going to have 120 pages of short comics. It will have 8 pages each from both of these stories, as well as 8-page installments of other work from a whole bunch of amazing people. I am so excited. We have 7 of those out already, but they were originally smaller. We were doing 60 pages each, and now we have changed the publication schedule, so we put them out half as often, but each anthology has twice as much in it. So the next one will be out in July. It's anthology number 8, and we're working on that now. So please keep your eyes and ears open about that. Should be launching in early July, and it's got work from JL Draco, who is in chat, and also Lenny Peppers, who is also in chat right now. I'm super, super, super excited. I don't want to give away too much about any of it, but we've got so much good stuff. It's going to be amazing. There's a lot of representation of very different types of things. We've got a polyamorous, queer, trans, disabled fantasy story coming. Excuse me. I just choked myself. Excuse me. We've got a story about a goblin zombie hunter with a rotten arm. We've got, what else? Oh, we've got some very deep stories that cover some hard topics, but also like ultimately talk about the idea of healing. And we've got the first 8 pages of a story called Quantum by Lenny Peppers and James Mason that I am so excited about, that talks about issues of queer and indigenous life in America. I don't want to give too much away. I'm really excited about it, and I'm trying not to like launch into space right now. So it's going to be amazing. There's going to be so much more in it. I can't even remember all of it right now because it's a gigantic book. It's going to be awesome. And super exciting news about that. Up until now, we have not had a way to subscribe to Oneshi Press because we put things out not with super regularity at first. When we were just getting started, we didn't really know how it was going to work. It took a while for us to like collect our projects together into single volume issues. So we didn't have like a subscription service set up for people who wanted to get all of the anthologies or all of, the Tracy Queen stuff or what have you. But as of hopefully a little bit later this month, a week or 2 from now, we're going to be relaunching our Patreon, which is basically a subscription crowdfunding service where you pay monthly rather than a one-off project. And it's going to be our subscription service. So if anyone out there is interested in, you know, just signing up and not having to individually order everything that we put out when it comes out, this is a really great way to do it. You can subscribe and get copies or digital downloads of everything that we make, plus a whole bunch of other awesome goodies that we're going to be offering. So keep your eyes and ears open for that. And in 2 weeks, when I come back on the 23rd of June to read chapter 19, hopefully that will have been launched, or it will be just about to launch, depending on how quickly we get all the stuff done that we need to do for the relaunch. And I can tell you more about it then. And so on the 23rd of June, I will be reading chapter 19, which is titled Losing It to the Tubes. And it's going to go in depth talking about basically free streaming porn, which is kind of what owns the internet right now. And I want to talk about the ways that it has impacted the adult entertainment industry and the rest of us. It's really a gigantic phenomenon, the advent of free streaming porn on tube sites. It has changed the internet, and it has changed the way that we watch porn, and those two things being actually a very big part of life on Earth has literally changed the world. And I don't think that many people really give that the credit that it's due. And it's not really a good thing. I'm not trying to praise it necessarily, but I am saying that it's a big deal. So I wrote a chapter that really goes into detail about how that all happened, the history behind it, and where we're at now, or at least where we were at the time that I wrote this, which was like 3 years ago, which in porn time is like several lifetimes. So I will hopefully be able to do a little bit of updated information at the end of that chapter on June 23rd. So I think that's going to be it for now. I hope that you all have a lovely day, and that I see you back here in a few weeks, and I guess that's it. I don't really have a sign off there. So bye everybody. Thanks for stopping by.